This is the Amp Hour Podcast, recorded September 12th, 2011. Episode 60, Pancyclopaedic Prototyping Polymath.
Welcome to the Amp Hour. I'm Dave Jones from the EEV blog.
And I'm Chris Gamble from Chris Gamble's Analog Life.
And I am Joe Grand, a guest on the show and electrical engineer and, hardware hacker and washed-up TV host.
All right.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Joe.
Thanks for having me.
I think you're our first television star. I don't know, washed up. What washed up?
Tell us the story. Tell us the story.
Okay.
Yeah, let's start with that.
Yeah, okay. So we'll start with that. So I'm an electrical engineer. I've grown up with electronics since I was about 7 years
Yay.
old. In the early 80s. I never meant to be on TV, right? I never wanted to be on TV. But I ended up being a co-host of a show on Discovery Channel called Prototype This. And
And I'm sure that's how most people know you, right?
Well, you'd be surprised.
Maybe not. Maybe that's a bad assumption.
I think the people that were in this community that were watching the show already knew of me anyway. So the only new people who learned about me maybe were people who weren't involved in technology. So basically, the show aired one season, 13 episodes, and it was 4 guys building prototypes of crazy things. And it was a really great time. It lasted about 18 months to film these 13 episodes. And ultimately, I'm sure we can talk about this at length, but ultimately, Discovery canceled the show. They said it cost too much money to produce each episode and took too long to produce each episode. So I
was going to say
that
13 months. Sorry, how many?
18 months. Well, they realized
to produce
that's a
one
lot.
season. That is a lot.
Well, yeah, and they realized that engineering is hard, right? It's like we told them that
Yeah,
at the beginning.
go
It's
figure.
like not only do we have to make stuff that looks cool on TV, and we have to be on TV, but we have to actually design the stuff. It was the 4 of us were actually building and designing. We weren't having somebody else do it behind the scenes. So it lasted for a while, and it made it was a great experience, but also very frustrating with the politics and a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that happened. So I joke around and say I'm washed up. I'm always open to more, but the experience was definitely eye-opening.
Yeah. So can you give our listeners kind of an idea about some of the stuff you made when you were prototyping, just for the scope of how difficult it was to make them?
Yeah, okay. So the reason it took 18 months is Discovery wanted things that had never been done before, that looked good on TV, and that we could guarantee would work.
Oh, my God. No problem.
That's a hell of a spec set right there.
That narrows things down. And so we did some things like a 30-foot giant computer-controlled water slide simulator.
Ooh.
A high-tech firefighter pack that had heads-up display and thermal imaging camera and all sorts of other neat stuff.
That's awesome.
And actually, each episode really took around 2 to 3 weeks to film, sometimes as much as 5 for the really, really, really big ones. But then a lot of the other time was just spent brainstorming and trying to come up with ideas that Discovery would actually like. So what else? We built a truck that could elevate itself and drive over traffic, move in any. It had omnidirectional wheels. It could move in any direction, automatically park itself. So lots of really big things. Because
I was going to say, this is all big mechanical stuff, right? This is not little electronic LED flashing gadgets, right?
It was serious things. And the original intent of the show was to build the future and make things that potentially could be products in the future. So
okay, right. That's the premise. Unlike Mythbusters, which is just their premise is busting myths, right? So
that's right.
So they can be a bit more crude and backyard.
That's right. We had the same production company as Mythbusters, and the success of Mythbusters was basically,
which is an Australian production company, actually.
It is. It's Beyond Productions.
Yep. And Beyond Productions.
Test the myth and blow something up. But then in our case, it was design it, build it, test it, fix it, and then have this big payoff. Which unfortunately we didn't blow stuff up.
You signed up for that spec? You signed up for this? Come on.
Well, that sounds like a study in entropy. Things go towards disorganization, right?
Well, but there was there were big projects, lots of mechanics, but also lots of electronics that needed to control the stuff. So for me, since I kind of specialize in low end 8-bit digital design, embedded system design, microcontroller stuff, and rapid prototype builds, building things quickly, it was like, oh, that's awesome. This is a chance to bring engineering to the masses and show millions of people what real engineers do. And that was sort of my naive view of it until we actually got to the show, and the cameraman the first day was filming us, and he was filming me soldering, and he goes, "This is boring. I'm going to the workshop," and left. And then that was the first day, and that was an eye opener of like, okay, maybe I know all of the listeners of this show, myself included, think that soldering is pretty sexy and it's cool to watch people build stuff. But in general, it's like if it doesn't have sparks and doesn't blow up, it's hard to capture people's attention.
That's the problem. You should have been soldering with like an acetylene torch.
Yeah,
Right.
Well, we thought of that, and actually, Zaz Brooks, one of the other guys on the show, he was a software guy, and it turns out none of us knew each other before the show, and Zaz and I actually have a bunch of the same friends, but had never actually met. So we were the two guys up in the lair, like designing the electronics and the software that no one would ever see. So we had to come up with cool ways to show off what we were doing in a way that people would like on TV. So it was like, let's try to dress up in costume and do all these weird things to explain these technical concepts.
Oh, no.
That's like the classic.
What you had to do to showcase what
that's like the hacker movie.
Well, that's what we had to do. Right, it's like a hacker movie to have all this extraneous graphics and crazy stuff to show a command line script running or something.
Right. Exactly.
But that's what we had to do, and it ended up working. Like we ended up actually motivating a lot of kids. I got emails from kids saying, "This was the coolest show. I want to be an engineer. How do I start?"
Awesome.
So that was sort of cool. It's like a neat byproduct of that. Even though Discovery was targeting the Mythbusters audience, which was 18 to 39, it seemed like most people watching our show were younger. We're in junior high school and in high school, and even in college. So it was cool to actually, even though they didn't show a lot of technical content, and Zaz and I would always fight about trying to show more technical content on the show, it motivated people, and that was actually kind of cool.
And so the fact that you weren't getting that golden 18 to 39 demographic that actually spends a lot of money, was that the ultimate demise, or was it something else?
Well, they didn't tell us. I mean, they just said we cost too much money, which is funny because the TV industry, I mean, I could rant about this for days. The TV industry basically treats anybody that's on the screen like complete crap. There's a reason why there's these different unions and groups of actors and on-screen talent, because production companies and networks just otherwise will completely take advantage of you. So with TV, they like to not only take advantage of the talent, but take advantage of getting stuff for free and saying, well, we're a TV show, you should give us things for free. So we were spending about $20,000 to $30,000, I think, per episode, but we were getting hundreds of thousands of dollars of free stuff from various companies to help us, sponsors of the show, technically.
For like product placements and stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really wasn't that much money we were spending, but I guess, if you think about it and you see most of Discovery's content, most of any network television content, you can make a pretty crappy documentary about aliens for, a third of the price.
Yeah.
So we got the short end of the stick, and it's, I think there's definitely room for more engineering programming out there. It's just a matter of convincing the producers and convincing the networks and convincing executives that have no idea about engineering, that it is a process and it is hard, and you have to actually design stuff and test it and, build it and make changes. And it's not going to work the first time. It might not work at all, but that's part of the process.
Well, but even if you convince them of that, there still is the problem of actually targeting a mainstream audience.
Yeah.
So how do you make engineering interesting for a mainstream audience?
Well, that's the hard thing.
That's always going to be the killer, right?
Yeah. I mean, everybody these days takes electronics and takes hardware for granted, right? Like if you're a real design engineer, you know this because, nobody realizes how hard your job actually is. And they, people look at an iPhone and they're like, well, the dumbasses at Apple should have made it smaller. It's like people they take things for granted, and especially with the way the technology moves so quickly these days, is that people don't realize how much actual work goes into designing a product. And that's what happened with, with the TV show.
I always like to use the analogy of the building industry.
Uh-oh.
Did he disappear?
And we might have lost Dave. He might have ranted himself out of existence here, so people don't know. Dave is actually he's heading to a conference in Melbourne, and he's in the hotel room right now, calling into our server from a mobile phone. So we might have a little drop out there here and there. But yeah, Joe, I totally agree with you. I mean, the fact that I even do it. I catch myself doing it, right? I mean, I work in electronics. I know the complexities of a lot of products. and I still thump on my phone, and I'm like, why aren't you faster?
Yeah.
And this thing's like, I'm like, oh, you crashed my maps program that tells me exactly where I am in the world. It's it's ridiculous,
right?
And
999% of the people out there are just users of the technology. So it's hard to be an engineer really, on TV and off screen.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So tell us more about that TV lifestyle too, because I'm just intrigued by the whole idea of engineering on TV. I mean, honestly, I think in perpetuity people are going to ignore engineers. I don't want it to happen. I love what First is doing about the PR right now and everything else, but honestly, I have no hope for it. We're just going to stay in obscurity for now. I mean, maybe there'll be something in the future. I don't know.
Well, I think it seems like that. We sort of get in the limelight once in a while if there's some cool product or something that the media latches onto. But in general, we're still people that work in laboratories, and maybe we don't even have windows, and there are a lot of stereotypical things that are true about our industry, and I'm totally fine with it. Like, I don't need to be in the limelight. I like designing products, and I don't care if a company gets credit for something that I designed. That's fine. I like to see things on the shelves, and I like to see people using my products. And I don't, So I think a lot of engineers are like that. Is they like the technology and they like engineering so much that they're not looking for the credit. And I actually felt a little weird being on TV because of that. And everybody loves the limelight, right? Everybody likes having their name in lights and getting some attention. Well, that's true. But most people would kind of think about it and say, oh, that would be sort of cool. Like I was walking down the street in San Francisco with my son and my wife, and a guy honks the horn and rolls down the window and says, I love Prototype this. And it was cool. I'm like,
that's awesome.
And then he emailed me later to assure me that he wasn't, some complete freak.
Right.
But,
wait, how do you get your email? Oh, you just looked it up or something? No.
Oh yeah, on my website. You can just contact me through my website.
Oh, okay.
But it was like that stuff is sort of fun, but it wasn't what I was looking for. And what I learned about in the TV industry is a lot of people on TV, that's what they want to do, is they want to be a TV host, and they want to be on the screen. And so it was weird for me, and I know for Zaz and possibly for the other guys on the show, that we were just normal people doing this stuff. And you'd mentioned that the TV lifestyle, Chris, and like the TV lifestyle, unless you're I don't know, name a famous actor. Unless you're somebody with a real reputation of
Brad Pitt, right?
Yeah, Brad Pitt, or whatever. It's not much.
So there's no Us Magazine covering your life story.
It's not much of a lifestyle, I would say. And maybe I just had a bad experience with a production company, but we didn't get paid millions of dollars. We didn't have trailers. We had to fight for actually getting food brought to us while we were filming a show. We filmed on Treasure Island in the San Francisco Bay, and there's three ways to get there. All of them require going over the Bay Bridge, halfway across the Bay Bridge. So you could either take the bus, you could drive.
You take the BART or no?
That's it. You could take the bus, you could drive.
BART?
So
you can't do the BART?
No BART. So, we were stuck on this island filming the show, and it's like, well, wait, we need to eat lunch. But they're like, well, we can't. We have to film the scene about you guys, doing our design meeting or walking in the door or whatever.
Being hungry.
Yeah, and it's like, well, can't we just get some snacks, some fruit? And, it was all of these things that we had to fight for, which if you look at most on-screen talent, that's why, people that have been on TV before, if they ever go back, demand food and demand a break and demand a schedule, so they actually know, I want, at noon, I'm taking a break no matter what. And it's things that you would just sort of take for granted. It's like, well, of course they're going to let us eat lunch, right? Because that's what people do, but not, they don't have to. And so the lifestyle wasn't, it was a lot of work. Like, I much prefer being in my lab designing stuff without a camera in my face all the time. So it was fun to do things and kind of goof off and have fun and explain things to the camera. But, my true love is engineering, and it was definitely an interesting experience.
It sounds like give me YouTube any day, right?
Yeah, YouTube, you control exactly what you want.
You can be a YouTube star. Give me that any day.
Some office somewhere else writing comments about how your hair looks bad and how you need to, not wear that shirt and not scratch your nose while you're saying this thing on an interview. And there was a lot of stuff that you see on the show. Like, I can't watch TV the same anymore. When you see somebody walking in the door of a show and, like, pretending to be excited to meet somebody for the first time, like that stuff, even on reality shows, is just completely not real. So So there's a lot of legwork we had to do that wasn't engineering related. So we had to walk in the door, and we had to do that 3 different times because we only had one camera crew a lot of times. We had to set up the scene a lot. So it took, I would say like 75% of the show was all of the rest of the show, not engineering. And then we had to do 90% of the work in 25% of the time to actually build the stuff. So now I sound like a complete bitter old man. And
no, I think it's well deserved there.
I would definitely do it again if the circumstances are right, and if there was an opportunity to actually showcase engineering in a way that, not like, oh wow, look, engineering's so cool, I can blink lights. That's not the goal. The goal is to actually show real engineering and how the design process works and how you can learn things from failing and trying things, trial and error, in the real design process, and not try to gloss it up and not try to be like, gee whiz, this is cool, but just do it for real. And if the circumstances are right, I think it could be done right.
Yeah, you'd almost need like an entire show devoted to failing, or every 3 shows you might make a breakthrough, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is we failed one episode. It was the 6x6 all-terrain legged vehicle, which essentially was a scaled-up version of this 6-legged robot that was based on some biomimicry of some
like a hexapod kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't exactly. Yeah, it had 6 legs. I think that's the similarity to the hexapod.
Okay.
But so we decided to scale that up and make it something that a human could ride in, and which was completely ridiculous. And we made some
and awesome.
Yeah, and awesome. Yeah, we made some really good progress with it, but at the end of the allocated time, which I think was 4 weeks or something, it wasn't working. It was falling over. We had some PID loop in there to control the servos to keep everything stable. It just wasn't working right. And the engineer or the producer sent the tapes to the network, and they're like, we couldn't get it working. And the guys at the network were like, oh my god, we failed. What are we going to do? We have to do something with this footage. We have to use it. And the producer is like, well, it's okay because the failure was actually really cool, and they explained why it failed and stuff. And they're like, so Discovery was freaking out until they saw a rough cut of the show, and they go, oh, failing is actually interesting.
Yeah.
So
did that air then?
It did air, and we failed, and Discovery actually gave us more time to try to refine it. We made some refinements to it, fixed some of the failures that we had encountered the first time around, but still failed.
Nice.
That's great, man.
So
that's great.
That's how it goes sometimes. But even with all of the fighting and the pushing to get technology aired on the show and all of this stuff, we did end up educating the network about engineering, and that was another good byproduct that came out of it. So maybe future shows won't have to go through what we went through to succeed. And by the way, all the episodes for some reason are on BitTorrent, which I'm not advocating, but we do not receive royalties.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Well, we don't receive royalties for the episodes. I'll just leave it at that. But they're definitely worth watching. And some of the behind the scenes stuff I put up on YouTube. If you just search for Prototype This, there's all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
But I definitely encourage people who haven't seen the show to go, check it out because it's kind of fun.
Yeah, and we'll definitely link everything in the show notes here. I mean, we'll try and find a bunch of those videos and stuff. So
yeah.
Am I back on, guys? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back.
I'm
Dave,
back,
this has been like the quietest episode from you yet. I kind of like this.
Sorry.
I say every episode you use your cell phone.
So I just had a question there. Joe, you said that you put up behind-the-scenes stuff up on YouTube.
Yes.
Does that mean that you have the rights to do that?
Well,
how does that work?
Well,
it's your own
camera,
footage.
Right? So basically, I had my camera with me all the time because, like any good engineer, you want to document the process, right? So I would document my personal build because I thought it was cool that I was building the stuff, but I also documented, I was just filming stuff as we were doing it, and the producers hated it because I would always end up in the scene, like with the camera. And
that's
and I wasn't supposed to film it because I was supposed to be concentrating on whatever, being a host. So I have a bunch of stuff of different tests that didn't make it on the show, and just things that I thought were neat that I put up online. And then, of course,
That's interesting, though, because they do that more now. I mean, like, it seems like more... I mean, I think those might be scripted, too, the behind-the-scenes stuff. Yeah. But it seems like more shows are doing that kind of thing now. Where
everyone's doing it as part of the box set, It's got to have the DVD extras.
Well, yeah, it's part of it. Yeah, it's part of it, and a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff is controlled by the network or by the producers. But in this case, it was just me with the camera. And I also put up all of the engineering documentation for the various builds, like anything that I had a hand in. Schematics, source code, whatever. All of that's on my website too for each episode, so people can kind of check out and actually see that we did build this stuff and didn't just make it up for TV.
Yeah. Right.
Open source TV show.
Yes.
Huh? So if you don't know why I dropped out there, did you guys discuss it?
Yeah, we said you don't like talking to us, and you wanted to eat more breakfast. I think you were hungry because you're in the. I said you're in Melbourne, being a lazy bum.
Yeah, what are you there for?
Melbourne. I am in a hotel room in Melbourne, by the way, and I've got some weird contraption here. I've got my tripod. I'll take a photo of this and post it. But I've got my tripod. 2 legs are up on the lounge here behind me, and one is on the desk in front of me. And I've got my podcasting mic taped to my tripod because I don't have a proper desk stand for it. I've only got my boom mic, which I couldn't bring with me, boom stand, and it's all a bit backyardy at the moment. And I'm going through my phone. I'm going through the 3G connection on my phone. I've got it set up next to me as a wireless hotspot, and I'm hooking into that because the idiots at the hotel advertise broadband, and I got here, and broadband actually means bring your own modem. Plug it into the phone line. What? Gotta be kidding
what
me.
A hack.
Anyway,
what a
hack.
Well,
you don't bring your acoustic coupler with you everywhere you go?
No, I didn't bring my 300 baud acoustic coupler. No, afraid not.
So, Joe, speaking of hacking and horrible, that's a horrible hack that Dave did. But if it works, it works. What's your take on the hackerspace movement these days? I mean, like, what are you seeing, and how do you contrast it to your early days? I mean, you were part of the early hacker movement, right?
Yeah. So I was part of a hacker group back in the early '90s called The Loft. And we were instrumental in one of the first groups to sort of be kind of public facing, and we discovered a lot of security vulnerabilities in various products, namely notably Windows, and went to Microsoft, and we were some of the early people to do this kind of full disclosure, vulnerability disclosure type of thing, and go to a company and say, hey, we found a security vulnerability in your product, you should really fix this. And companies say,
and pay us.
we don't. Yeah, no.
As a consultant, right?
We did it totally just.
Oh, okay.
Just for the love of it, and
cool,
and the recognition. It definitely wasn't for money,
right?
But we'd say fix the problem, and the company would go, no, there's no one would ever do that. So we would write exploit code and say, no, somebody could do this. So we were instrumental. in doing
we're
that.
doing this right now.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
And this was in the early '90s, and the group was 7 of us, and it was back when I started in computers in 1982. I had an Atari 400 and an acoustic 300 baud acoustic coupler modem, and
yes,
I would get free phone calls to get access to bulletin board systems further away from my local calling area. And to have a computer back in the day was not something you would brag about. Being a hacker back when we were at the Loft was not cool, right? It's like these days, if you're a hacker, it's cool, and you work on projects and go to hacker spaces and stuff. But back then, it was a lot more misunderstood. Even then, people said, "Oh, okay, hackers. Some hackers break the law," and there's always going to be this discussion about what a real hacker is. But it was just being in that community at the time. The community was a lot smaller, and it was just a lot different. So the hackerspace movement these days, there were kind of closed knit private groups back when we were at the Loft, and that's how we were. But now it's like this next generation of hacker spaces that are all over the place, and it's amazing to see. It's wild to see because you have these groups of people, maybe some of my generation and then the next generation of kids that like working together, and they're not trying to hide stuff, and they don't have to have fake names to release information, and they can learn lots of things, and there's just a lot more community and a lot more people willing to share information and share their skills with other people, and it's cool to see. Like, I'm not really involved in our local hackerspace here is Noisebridge in San Francisco, which was one of the first of this next generation. I'm not really too involved in it just because I don't leave my house much. But it's cool to see, and I think it's great. The more people that get involved in engineering and hacking and in whatever is good, right? The more people that are empowered to do it yourself as opposed to rely on big business and corporations is good. But there's some downsides that I see too. Seeing how I've kind of been through it, is we're already starting to see more corporate influence in these hacker spaces. Things are now sponsored by Facebook, or this party sponsored by whatever. And it's a good way to get money, but is that going to ultimately affect how the hacker spaces operate? I don't know.
Oh, it will.
Yeah.
It's bound to, right? But it's just a matter of how much, right?
Yeah.
And when we were at the Loft, in the late '90s, I was working at an actual product development company, being an engineer, and then at night go over to the Loft, and we would just hack on stuff. We wanted to do it full time. We were like, okay, what could we sell the company and maybe do this full time? So that's what we tried to do, and it was right around the time when the computer security industry, a lot of consulting companies were coming up. So we ended up joining forces with some venture capital and some other guys starting a consulting firm, and we started a security consulting firm with the expectation that we would continue to operate our side of the business as we did at the Loft. 7 guys that would just come in whenever and do work and hack on stuff and not really have to obey anybody or report to anybody. And it totally didn't work. Like it worked for like a month or two until the VC said, "Wait a second, we want our money. What are these 7 guys doing?
What is your exit
Right.
strategy?" Right?
So we thought it was going to be great, and that ended up being not very good. So if hackerspaces are starting to change their values based on the fact that they need to get corporate dollars and stuff, I don't know. It's sort of maybe it's good in the short term, but might not be good in the long term.
Yeah,
that's why sponsorship's not bad, because you get the money without all the strings attached, really, or without too many major strings attached.
But we don't know.
Yeah, you have to be careful.
But we never know, like what people are signing up for. It's like, we'll give you $10,000 for this party, but you need to put our logo on every T-shirt you ever make, or things like that.
No, right?
Yeah. I think the resounding message is you got to be careful. You got to watch out how you agree to things, because
especially because
people want to get their mon's worth.
Yeah, and now you see, I haven't followed it too closely, but you have like Red Bull sponsored a hacking contest. So there's corporations that are seeing that this hacker movement now is a legitimate way for them to get market share and get advertising and get people to essentially do stuff for them in exchange for something cool. And that's also a little bit dangerous. It is cool because now lots of on one hand these companies are giving hackerspaces hardware to hack on. But then it's, sponsored by Red Bull. Again, it's that corporate influence, and I've always tried to avoid any sort of corporate influence in my day-to-day activities, even when I was younger. I'm just very distrustful of that, and another reason why I work for myself. And so, that maybe should be a warning to people that are getting involved in hackerspaces or just doing things on their own, is that, these corporations are not just in it to be cool. They're in it to make money.
Yep.
Yeah. Right, and that's the bottom line.
Well, that's the challenge I have, because I'm now a full-time video blogger, and I make most of my money from advertising on my website, and I'd love to not have the ads there, but, I'd also, but I know that if I have to go earn a living back at a 9-to-5 job, well, the blog's probably, it won't go under, but it certainly,
take a back seat. Well,
it'll certainly take a back seat to my current life. Yeah,
that's an engineering trade-off, I guess.
Yeah, we're seeing that actually in a bigger sense today. There was news today that Bug Labs is hooking up. So Bug Labs is an open source hardware company. People don't know. They have a modular platform. It's all open. They're like one of the big sponsors of the upcoming open source hardware conference, right? That's later this week. And they're partnering with Ford, and so some of that is really good. They're putting some new modular hackable piece into Ford cars.
Oh wow!
So people can develop for it, and it's a cool idea, right? And I'm sure from Ford's perspective, they want app development. They want people building around their platform, but at the same time, there are like Joe said, there's risks, there's trade-offs, because Ford's going to ask for certain things. They might say, well, you can open up this, you can't open up that, And
then hopefully somebody in the community will just open up everything.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, Peter Semmelhack's the guy, one of the guys in charge of Bug Labs, and he's a very big proponent of open source hardware, and we're big fans of open source hardware here. But like when you do have that big company got out to make money thing, there's going to be some issues there. So it'll be interesting to see how they get through it and see what they do with it.
But that's probably too big an opportunity to pass up, isn't it? I mean, that's
that's
pretty
great.
Huge,
I mean, it's great. Congratulations to him. That's spectacular, really. But getting inside a car, right? That's like, in terms of large purchases, that's like saying, well, what what else is a big purchase? A home? I mean, like getting to integrate with a certain
you're
builder's
inside a TV
home.
or something,
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
You're inside how does that work, though? What are they going to put inside the car? Some sort of interface where you can plug one of these Bug Lab modules in, or what? How does that work?
Maybe they'll put it on the CAN bus along with everything else, and then you can actually control windows and start cars and stuff.
That would be interesting. I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay, and you can monitor the engine performance and all that.
I
think this is all.
Who knows if they try to?
I think this is media based, because you know how cars are all moving towards infotainment. That horrible word, infotainment.
Oh,
but
and
I
there's
think
a big
this is,
heads-up display now, and there's a big touchscreen navigation.
So maybe they'll give them a window, but I don't know if they. Joe, you'd probably go crazy if you get at a CAN bus, huh? Just start hacking away, put in a Zigbee module in your friend's car, and
I'm sure whatever first revision they come out with is going to be completely, able to be hacked for all sorts of stuff they weren't intending. I actually, it's funny. We're looking to buy a new car right now, and or to lease a new car anyway, and it's hard because I'm looking for something that doesn't have any of these, nifty new infotainment features and DVD players and OnStar and all this stuff. I'm paranoid. I just want to drive my car. I don't want somebody listening to what I'm saying as I drive my car.
Oh,
I don't know though, because even all the emission stuff these days. I mean, cars they're optimized for emissions controls and everything else. There's micros controlling cycles, and good God, I should run the other direction talking about cars. Dave knows about this. Every time I say something stupid, but there are a lot of micros in cars these days.
If you're paranoid, there's an easy fix. Just line all of the inside of the car with alfoil, as we call it here in Australia.
or ride a bicycle.
There you go.
Or ride a bicycle,
yeah.
But then the satellites can still track you and read your brain waves, and
we're going from you two together. It's like Chris and the conspiracy theorists.
Paranoia.
Uncle Sam is listening.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing, but yeah. So that's why you stick with the 8-bit micros. You figure no one's going to track your 8-bit stuff. Is that the idea, or
no? It's funny because I just like the simplicity of an 8-bit micro. Like that's just since I grew up using them. It's just kind of there's a huge need for that type of product. Like I design very simple, effective things, something that does the task, but doesn't have all this extra crap. And that's I call myself a technology minimalist because yes, I have a cell phone, but no, I don't use all the crazy apps on it, and it took me a long time to get a BlackBerry and then ultimately an iPhone. Like I was using a prepaid Nokia phone for a long time because I think
like a brick,
like a big one. And it just seems like a lot of, it's not the engineer's fault, but it's somewhere along the chain that companies just think if it has a lot of features, the more features it has, the better. Right? And
feature creep.
Yeah, it's feature creep. Yep. It's like, well, if there's a 32-bit micro available, let's just use that. And now it's 400 megahertz. Let's, now we can play video. Let's make it play video. So I like the constraints of an 8-bit device because it forces me not only to design just for what I need, but also do things creatively. And if I need extra horsepower, I have to, maybe write things in assembly and maybe do things a little more creatively and just not have this complete open, Linux-based hardware platform for everything I design.
Yeah. But unfortunately, that's modern society with the communications revolution. How do you get internet on your phone with an 8-bit micro?
Right.
It's just
luckily I don't design smartphones, so that's for me it's the easy answer.
You'd go crazy
because I think there's still a lot of neat little products that can help people, and that people can use that can run on 8-bit stuff, and that are embedded. You guys are analog guys, and I watch your shows.
I'm
and
not
listen
analog,
to you and,
no.
No, well, it sure seems like it.
Oh, I'm mixed signal, really. I'm a bit of a mixed signal guy.
So
Dave's all over the place.
Chris is analog. You're mixed signal, and I'm neither of those. I'm just digital. So there's a lot of it's sort of black magic to me, the analog side, and 8-bit. I just think there's a use for simple, effective devices that are that do a task and aren't just overly designed and feature creeped and overcomplicated.
Yep.
Yeah,
I've got a question with
do the
loft.
job pretty well.
Where did the name the loft come from, Joe?
Okay,
were you actually in a loft, physically in someone's loft? Right, that's what I figured.
So the loft we spelled it L0PHT, which was of course hacker speak for loft, LOFT, and our first space was an artist loft space in the south the south end of Boston. So, we just said, let's call it the loft, L0PHT. And it was funny. I sort of rebelled against that for a long time for, quite a while, I would still call it LOFT. But then eventually the name just stuck, and it was The Loft. And we had, hackers from all over the world would come and visit us in Boston and sleep on our floor and, do all the things that hacker spaces are kind of around for now. But yeah, we were a loft space in just in a crappy neighborhood.
So
Cool.
are you still in touch with a lot of these hackers back then? I'm just wondering about trajectories that they've taken. I mean, have people that you know from those days, are they running companies? Are they doing the same thing you're doing? What kind of stuff?
Yeah, everybody. So once we started At Stake, which was a security company, the security consulting company, things sort of fell apart. Money got involved, and people sort of changed their tune, and our whole what I thought was like this collective goal just sort of fell apart. And I was young. It was 2000, so I was 25 when everything started when we sold the company, and about 26 or 27 when everything really started falling apart for me, from my perspective. We were very, the corporation was very influential on certain people, and it just it stopped being fun. And so I got out of it, but it hit me really hard because these guys, I was the youngest by about 6 years, and from being 15 years old to 25, I looked up to those guys every day. They were my mentors.
Yeah.
They kept me out of trouble.
Yeah.
I actually had gotten in trouble before I joined the Loft, and this was a place for me. It was an outlet for me to go. It was, keeping me off the street. And I really looked up to these guys, and it was a very important time in my life. And then to see it all fall apart was just completely heartbreaking. So we're in touch with people. I would say the first few years were pretty shaky. Like no one really talked to each other because it was just there's too much kind of history. But recently we have a mailing list. Once in a while we talk on it, and some more than others. But we are all still in touch. Everybody is still involved in technology in various ways. And probably the most high profile is Mudge, who we sort of put out there as the leader of the Loft and whatever. But we were all on equal footing. But
Mudge, is that his handle, I presume?
That's his handle, and he is actually now working at DARPA. Well, he's something in charge of new projects at DARPA, which is a defense agency research, something or some government thing.
Yep.
I should know more.
The
It's a
Defense
military
Advanced
arm.
Research Agency.
But he's actually
they fund crazy projects.
He just launched a new project called Cyber Fast Track, which is intended to enable hackerspaces, sort of like the Loft, to work on very quick turn government related projects and get cash without having to go through the whole government red tape. So that's
interesting.
So it's sort of interesting that he went from pure hacker to executive at security company to government man, but now still trying to help the hacker community, and we'll see what happens with that. Like that's he's definitely the most high profile of us doing things these days. And the other guys,
was that the program that was about they talked, I saw one DARPA program where they were talking about like crowdsourcing like vehicle design. Was that one?
I don't know. He just recently announced it at Black Hat, the Black Hat briefings over the summer.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if it was vehicle, but it's mostly things. I think if a security company is doing something cool with intrusion detection or with malware analysis or something, and maybe they have something to offer the government, but they don't have, they're just not set up to deal with the government because most people aren't. He was trying to offer
it's
a way.
Big operation.
It's a total pain in the ass. So we'll see if it works. But he's doing that, and two of the other guys, Weld and Dildog, both work. They started a company called Veracode, which does static binary analysis for malware and malicious code stuff. And the other guys are doing various technology related things. We're just not as we're not as close as we were. We're not nearly as close as we were. And I think it just at the time there were 7 of us at the stage in our lives. It was just a perfect storm of all of us coming together to do these amazing, great things. And then, we started growing up and we got, we all wanted different things. And we all believed in different things. It's just, it is what it is. And I learned a lot from it. And I think, in part it's what makes me so kind of bitter and pessimistic and cautious about things these days. But also I learned so much along that line that, now I can run my own business and I can deal with large corporations if I need to sell, licensed product or sell product. And so, it was good and bad, and I wouldn't have changed it for anything. It was just sort of, it didn't end very well.
Yeah, that's too bad.
It's a shame.
So let's hear some of the newest stuff. I mean, you said 8-bit micros. Can you talk about any of your current projects or stuff? stuff you're looking at like that?
Yeah. So the kind of part of my business, most of my business is just developing products and then licensing those out to companies. Some of the times it's hobbyist modules. So things I've designed were a text-to-speech module for a company called Parallax, who makes the basic stand. Yeah, I'm sure you have. And a GPS module, an RFID module, and a read-write version of RFID. So, kind of building blocks that other people can use for projects. And then I do consumer stuff as well. So let's see, some recent things, I guess, that I can talk about. There's a few products that are coming out that I did consulting work for that are coming out that I can't talk about yet. But a recent thing that actually just got shipped to Parallax is a low-cost laser rangefinder.
Cool.
It's just it's kind of another sensor in the robotic sensor arsenal. It's like people that are doing
which is
robotics,
what they target.
Yeah, you have your ultrasonic, you have your infrared, and people have been hacking on the Kinect, right? Like there's some more expensive solutions, but even doing Kinect stuff, you need a pretty powerful host. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, let's try to do a low cost laser rangefinder. Something that will just detect range within some decent amount of distance for people doing robotics. Like it was sort of a limited. Yeah. I tried to limit my specifications, and over the course of it actually ended up taking me 3 years, which is ridiculous.
Wow!
But I finally finished up the product into something that I think was cool enough. And we put it into production in July, and now it's actually going to be available next week through Parallax. And it's a neat thing. It runs on a propeller processor. Mm-hmm. Have you guys looked at that at all?
Yes,
I got a dev board, and I've been sitting on my hands, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah,
well, it's so people don't know it's essentially an 8-core microcontroller built completely from the ground up by Chip Gracie, one of the guys who started Parallax. And who's an amazing guy, and you should try to get him on the show if you can. He's totally just amazing. And so he designed
totally amazing.
Yep, check it off. So he designed this chip, and it's an 8-core processor and very powerful, but nothing. So I don't really know what to compare it to. It's just very different. But they have a lot of. There's a good development community with it. Kind of like Arduino, right? You have all these different objects and stuff that people have written. With the propeller, it's the same thing. They have this on the Parallax site. They have the Object Exchange, which is a place where people can write objects, various modules for the processor, and put them online. You can kind of use those as building blocks. And just a really cool part. So I use that and essentially a laser diode and a CMOS camera and some trigonometry to determine distance to a target object.
Yay, math.
Yeah, right. It's actually funny. It's like 7th grade level math, and it took me like 3 days of studying it again to remind myself how it works. It's like
nobody remembers that
tangent.
shit. Come on.
Yeah, sine? Is this sine or sin? Or what are we doing here?
And I was like, slope intercept line.
Oscar had a heap of apples.
Hypotenuse? What's that?
It was really embarrassing. Yeah. But luckily I was.
Is that what you guys used? Was it Oscar had a heap of apples? Is that what you used for remembering?
I just used Google.
How to do... Oh, really? Okay. Do you know that one, Dave?
I think I've heard of that one. I didn't use that. I just memorized them.
Oh, okay. So people out listening, it's Oscar had is OH, so opposite over hypotenuse is sine, and then you can figure out the other ones. A is adjacent, but that's how I did it.
That's the extent of my engineering right there is right. Ohm's law and tangents and cosines.
I had a calculator.
But so that's something that's cool, and that's a fully open source product.
Nice.
And so we'll see how it goes. We'll see if people end up using it. I think it's an interesting device. The range is like the really good range is about 6 inches to 4 feet, which is good for certain applications. And so we'll see how that goes. And let's see. I don't know. What else am I doing? I'm looking around my lab right now. I'm like, can I talk about that? No. Can I talk about that? No.
No, not that one. No, not that one.
I mean, I could talk about stuff I've done, but that's not as exciting.
How about this? Where are you doing most of your manufacturing these? I mean, we talk about manufacturing a lot on the show, just like where you're doing it. Like, are you doing China stuff? You doing locally? How do you do that stuff?
I do it all. So it really depends. Like anything with engineering, it depends on the project, right? Everything is project specific. So for the laser rangefinder, that is a product that was licensed to Parallax, and Parallax has manufacturing at their own place in Rocklin, California, which is right outside of Sacramento.
Cool.
And they have a factory set up in China. That's their own factory. They're not using someone else's. But in this case, they just signed some big deal with Radio Shack. So their local facility has been really busy, and this product was the testing procedure for the laser rangefinder was pretty technical, and it required a lot of ramp up to get things right. So we didn't want to go to China with it because it just would have been too hard. So we decided to use a local place around here in the Bay Area called Sonic Manufacturing, which is a really cool place. And their pricing is comparable actually to stuff in China.
Interesting.
Not completely one-to-one, but it's compelling enough to stay local.
It's not far off, yeah.
And that makes it, a lot of people say, oh, I designed a product, I'm just going to go manufacture it in China because that's what everybody does, not realizing that there's huge hidden costs to going there, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
there are.
And I've seen a lot of stories recently. I put a couple of stories on the list too. I mean, there was one on Fortune and one on what was this on smartmoney.com. Like they're about smaller companies that it's a really big deal because not only do you have to, the cost might be similar or even a little bit cheaper in China, but the quality side of things and making sure you just have someone there, that's the expensive side of things.
Right. Well, yeah,
so we're seeing a lot of resurgence.
Once you have to spend $4,000 to get on an airplane and go fix the problem, that gets costly. But there are times when it's useful. Like, so I've designed for the past 5 years. I designed the electronic badge for DEF CON, which is a hacker conference in Las Vegas, and the world's largest.
That's pretty cool.
Around 8,000 to 10,000 people go. And so on my website, there's links to the actual products. But those were, we had to make 8,000 of those, and the cost was very, very. We had to keep costs down. And, Jeff Moss, the founder of the conference, was like, well, can you do something for $5? I'm like, complete, assembled and parts and everything. And that's where we started, was a $5 bomb.
Yeah.
The most recent one for DEF CON 18, and I stopped doing it after 5 years, but DEF CON 18 was, I think, $14 because we had an aluminum substrate board with laser engraving and all sorts of crazy stuff. But to get that many done, I was using a facility in China called eTechnet, E-Teknet, who I'd done a lot of volume work with before. And, their quality was good, but I still had to stay on them. It was almost daily updates, making sure that they were, incorporating the changes that had to be done. And, but they were able to pull it off. And, they ended up, for a few of the years, they ended up having to manufacture all 8,000 boards within 3 days. And they pulled it off, and so they're definitely, it depends on the project. There's times to be local. There's times to go offshore. And, if it's quality, if it's price, if it's, delivery speed, then you have to deal with customs. So there's all these things that you have to consider. It's not just let's go to China.
Yeah. And that's interesting because you have a little bit more resources, I think, in the the Bay Area. It seems like there's some smaller manufacturing operations that seem to maintain business based on similar small run, prototyping or.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of. There's a lot of. This just having Silicon Valley here is huge, and I still. It's funny. I've been in California for 6 years and been in the Bay Area for 3. And I still get a kick out of it when I drive down 101 and I see Jameco. I'm like, oh, Jameco Electronics. What do I need? I try to think of something I could buy just because I can, right? And
exactly. We don't have that here in Australia. It's tough.
Yeah, it's nice to have that, and there's so many other places like that in surplus electronic stores. But since so much of the technology is here, that people are always going to do small run prototypes, and they're going to need people to manufacture things that aren't ready to go offshore. And some companies end up staying local, and then some, once they get the product to a point that it's full production, then they go offshore. But this is
well, how many assembly houses would there be in the US? There's hundreds of them, right? Here in Australia, there's, I don't know, you can probably count them on one hand, It's crazy.
That's true, and maybe
that's the huge difference,
I think there used to be more in the U.S. too, and it's just, when the bubble burst, it's gone.
Yeah. But the thing is, there are still hundreds of, companies there. So even thousands maybe. With, and they've, got a warehouse full of, pick and place machines. And it's fantastic. So you can keep it local if you want to.
Yeah, you can.
And there's competition between vendors and they're trying to compete with China. So, I would assume that they're going to be reasonably priced.
Right.
Stuff like that.
Well,
but here in Australia, I'm struggling to find anything.
But then you see, places, like Adafruit, they have their own pick and place now, right? So even small companies can do all their manufacturing in-house. you can get a good pick and place machine and start doing stuff yourself. And obviously there's all the
that's if
the
you
kit
have the
builders,
resources.
people that are selling kits that have their reflow toaster ovens and hot plates and all of that stuff. Yeah. So people are starting to do manufacturing in their own homes, and it's just manufacturing is becoming more and more accessible. That maybe in the future we won't have to rely on other facilities as much.
Yeah, and I have another article here. There's some group called Boston Consulting Group. I'm not sure who the heck they are, but I saw some article earlier in the week about that. Basically, in the next 5 years, they're saying, at least in the U.S., a lot of stuff is poised to come back, not just because of small stuff, but just available labor and available, money and everything else that works out pretty well. So,
yeah, I think
good to know.
I think there's nothing better than being face to face, and for me, that's what it comes down to a lot of times. Is like, if I know there's potentially going to be problems, or if I have to kind of track the project, there's nothing better than just driving over and seeing what's going on, and explaining to the actual technician or to the person dealing with the assembly, explaining how the product works first of all, so they actually know what they're building, but also just talking to them and talking with them until they understand what you're trying to say. It's just it just makes things way easier, and then you can actually focus your time on doing more engineering instead of trying to support something.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Even if it costs more money, I definitely, for at least for most things that I do, I like to stay where I can call somebody on the phone or drive there instead of having to wait for a response every 12 hours because of the time change.
Yeah, and also that plays right into your old codgerly mannerisms now, right?
Yeah,
I don't like this highfalutin technology and email, and I want to talk on a telephone.
I don't want to talk on the phone at 9 p.m. I want to watch TV.
I know, right? Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And there's a reason, I want to keep things here too, is because I can, and I feel as though I should. Try and, if I'm going to release something, I'll try and get it manufactured here, or at least somewhere other than China. I just want to feel as though I should support those sort of, places so that they aren't lost, especially here in Australia.
Yeah, kind of local industry.
Yep, local industry, keep it running. Yep.
Yeah.
It's a big deal, I think. Yeah. Because once you lose it, you will, it's hard to get it back. So, it's tough.
That's going to be a hard lesson, I think, at least for the U.S. I mean, they've already lost a lot. We've already lost a lot. And, they keep saying, it'll come back when it's right. But it's like, they will. But you have to have people relearn because all the people that were doing it are going to retire by then or
they're never going to want to do it
move
again.
on to something else.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, as far as I'm aware, there's only one company in Australia which still does rapid turn prototype PCBs, actually manufactures blank PCBs here in Australia. There's one. Oh no, there's another company which do really, like tin plate kind of, not, big solder mask, silk screen and all that highfalutin fancy stuff.
They did have a
but
CNC
I think there's
machine.
only one company that still manufacture them here, actually prototype PCBs. And they're very expensive. It costs you thousands of dollars to spin one prototype board. So, it forces you to go to China for those sort of prototype boards, unfortunately. It's a real shame. If anyone knows of any other place in Australia to get prototype boards or reasonable cost short runs, please let me know.
Yeah, do you end up do you go to China or do you go to the US to get stuff?
I go to China to get my prototype boards made and short runs and stuff like that.
It doesn't help you're a cheapskate too, right, Dave?
No, well, if you're manufacturing a prototype, and you might have 2 or 3 spins at it, you don't want to plonk down $500 on a prototype board.
And
I think for the setup and stuff.
An engineering, mindset too. It's like, you want to optimize cost. I want to do that. I'm a cheapskate in normal life, so as long as I can hold up quality, as long as I know I'm not going to get burned because the via, bleeds over or something, then it's kind of hard to argue against that sometimes.
Yeah.
But
see, I have no problem though charging more for a kit or something if I know it's all, if a lot of it comes from here and it's not all coming from China. I think a lot of people will, especially in our sort of community, will actually appreciate and understand that kind of stuff. It's like the Arduinos made in Italy, right? It's got proudly, it's got made in Italy proudly on it. And I think people really actually appreciate that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think it's a good thing. And I think you can actually charge more for it. I don't think, people will pay for things based on cost, but I think they'll also, in our industry, pay a bit more, if it's, helping, supporting local people.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree in most cases. There's something else I want to throw out about China, and I've experienced this a lot in just seeing friends, start hardware companies. And I'm an advisor for a few companies that are out there who get into hardware manufacturing, and they go, we're just going to go to China, and China will fix it. So we'll send them the prototype.
Right, yeah.
China will fix it, and it will magically become a product. And so there's sort of this void of people that want to manufacture their own hardware, just dumping stuff onto a factory and just assuming that it's going to be done right. And a factory, most factories, will have some engineering, some real engineers on staff, but it doesn't mean that they're any better than anybody else. And putting kind of false faith into this unknown entity to redesign your board to make it better is a little bit scary. So that's something that's something I just wanted to kind of mention, is that you always need to keep an eye on your product, even if you do send it offshore. If a company a factory might swap in different capacitors because they have a relationship with the company
cheaper,
there,
or whatever.
Exactly.
And then you run into the failure problem. What was that TDK, I think, had capacitors that were failing, or maybe a factory has a relationship with some broker that's getting counterfeit parts or crap parts.
Some gray market.
And that happens a lot unless you have that face-to-face contact and the client knows, or the factory knows, that you're a serious client. And most people aren't going to go to China and introduce themselves. So there's a lot of risk there that kind of will come later, right? If your product ends up, they substitute parts, and then 3 months down the line, products start failing, that's going to be a complete nightmare to try to, reverse engineer the problem and then work backwards.
And it's at the point when you're in volume too, so you got 1,000 of them out there instead of 10 of them out there, right?
Yeah. And that's happened in the most recent two projects that I've done consulting work for to design the prototype of the project. Sort of a pre-production state. It's to the point where they could manufacture it, but these guys want to bring it to a factory and have them cost reduce it even more, which is fine. But they end up replacing key subsystems that I spent hours and hours and days on refining for a specific reason. They'll drop in some other part that they're friendly with and completely change the operation of the design, and that's really risky. And then one company that did that, they don't have their own engineers. They had just hired me to do the design. They came back to me and said, these guys changed this stuff. Now it doesn't work. Can you help? And then they had to end up essentially paying as much as they did the first time around for me to go and then work with the factory to fix it. And it was fine for me because I got paid, but it was also really frustrating because the process could have been a lot smoother if it was just, if they wanted to make changes, but it was communicated to the original design engineer and all of that. But it was just this lack of communication really jeopardized the product.
It's too bad you were probably trying to keep on good terms with them and get more money from further work, because otherwise you could have just sent them the original BOM and been like, please see below or something like that.
Right. Except the factory didn't see anything wrong with it. They were using subsystems that they had already designed from other things, so they sort of used mine as just a proof of concept, and then made it themselves with their own modules and and kept some stuff the same and changed some stuff. It was really a mess. But ultimately now they're in production with, I think their latest run was 10,000 pieces, and they haven't seen a failure yet in the field, so that's good.
Woot. Excellent.
Yeah.
Our amp hour is almost up, Chris. Do we have any regular show segments to squeeze in?
We can do this. Oh yeah, shout out. How about that? Because it's pretty relevant too. The television side of things.
Oh, it is. Yes, the MakerBot TV show.
MakerBot started a TV show. I mean, it's an online TV show, but definitely some cool stuff. Joe, did you get a chance to see that? I don't know if you follow MakerBot.
I've only seen episode 1. I haven't seen episode 2 yet, but it's super cool. And I've
only seen the preview.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
it's worth watching, and it's only 5 minutes, so people with short attention spans like me like it. At least the first episode was 5 minutes.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's the non-Dave model because
it's the
he says it's gonna be 5 minutes.
Totally break all
50.
the rules.
Yeah, it's great though. So
with my 1 hour reviews,
I thought it was great.
It's crazy.
Yes.
But, hey, it works. Works for me.
Yeah, the Maker
Don't
Bot,
knock it if it's
MakerBot
working.
Definitely cool.
Yeah, they put a lot of production value into that too. I think there's 2 producers that are credited at the end of the show, and it is highly polished. And it does take quite a lot of work to get it down to that 5 minutes. So,
For sure.
Yes, excellent work.
Yeah. And real quick, we can do a This Day in Nerd History. I don't know if people like these. If people don't like nerd history, I can stop doing it. But I don't know. I thought there's some fun stuff this week. Today, August 12th, in 1958, Jack Kilby actually started with the transistor. He miniaturized what he had on silicon and showed it to his supervisor, and that was officially the first integrated circuit to be built. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Some people actually dispute that, don't they?
They dispute who is the father of the transistor. It was between Kilby and
No,
Moore?
we're talking
I
about the
forget who
IC here, aren't we?
Oh,
Not the actual
maybe.
transistor. We're talking about
He
ICs,
had
right?
He had 2 transistors on the one substrate, and then it
Oh,
became
that's
an
right.
IC,
Okay, yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's right. My bad. I've already gotten it wrong. Oh, well.
And I think you said August too. Isn't it September?
Today's September? I'm
Yeah,
way out
I
of it,
think
man.
you may have slipped August in
I'm
there.
getting married on Saturday.
Maybe
I got so much crap going on right now. Oh, my God.
When's the when is the wedding?
Saturday.
Wow.
Saturday's
This
big day.
Saturday.
Yep.
That's
Congratulations.
exciting. Yeah, that's going to be
Yeah,
a day.
it's
That's
great.
going to be a day in nerd history.
Right.
The days Chris stopped doing any hobbyist stuff. The day
Chris
the amp
Gamble's
hour ended.
nerd life ended on this day.
Yep. So that'll
You are
be
owned now.
Yep.
That's right.
That'll be good.
Now, has
She's
anyone-
used to
find
it.
out.
Has anyone asked you, is your wife to be technical?
She's not. She's expressly otherwise.
Yeah.
Although she's been talking about getting into like programming and Arduino and stuff, and I'm like,
Get outta
heck
here.
yeah, seriously,
Keep her,
it's awesome.
Keep her as far away as possible. Then
You think so?
Yeah, I think having friends that do that stuff is good. The same stuff you do. But there's nothing. After a full day of work, I would hate to come home and then have my wife say, "Let's go build another circuit." When it's like, oh.
Yeah,
But I know a lot of people that are married to to people that have exact same hobbies and professional lives, and it's fine. And then there's other people that can't. But I like having the mix.
Yeah, that's interesting. 'cause-
I'm being booted out at the moment. My wife's saying, "Get rid of all the crap. Go and
yeah, you're
go
going
and
to
get
new
an
office, right?
space. Bugger off."
Yeah,
That's funny. My wife likes me
yeah,
here,
they're
but
just getting kicked out.
my wife likes me here, but I asked her to review my articles and manuals and stuff, and she's like, "This is the most boring stuff I've ever read." but here's a typo, and I'm like, "Cool, that's fine." So she sort of understands what I do, but not really. I don't think anyone will ever really understand what engineers do.
Yeah, my wife's a scientist, so she sort of understands what I do, but she hates oscilloscopes. I hate those oscilloscope thingies.
Yeah, the ultimate battle in the Jones household, the test and measurement battle.
Right. Oh goodness.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Anyway, congratulations.
Yeah, well, next
Does
week
this
if
mean
I
you
go
won't
through
be
with
here
it,
next week?
I will be here next week. That's
you will.
how dedicated I am.
That's
Yeah.
commitment.
Wow.
Going back to work, yeah.
From your honeymoon, or just you're not going yet?
No, I'm not doing honeymoon until later, so I'll need some hosting help later in the year. I'm going to go in the winter when it's nice and miserable. I'm in Cleveland, so it's pretty miserable a good portion of the year. I'm going to try and escape
You'll have to
during
come
that.
to Australia, I'm telling you.
I don't know,
And
man.
stop in San Francisco on the way.
There you go. That's a heck of a trip. I could do the honeymoon world tour, and shortest marriage ever.
Yeah, right. If you can survive that honeymoon, then you can survive anything.
There you go. Well, Joe, thanks for so much for being on the show, man. It flew
Yes,
by, and
indeed.
it was
Yeah, no problem.
so much fun hearing from you.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll talk to everyone next week, and I'll be doing what my wife tells me by then. So.
We will. And I'm off to a hackerspace tonight.
All right. Can't wait to see those videos, Dave.
I'm off to the Melbourne hack. I got some great video yesterday. Wait until you see it. It's brilliant.
Awesome.
Yep.
All right. Till next week.
All right. See ya. Thanks, Joe.
See ya.